with on it. Will the deposits in every community bank in Oklahoma, regardless of their size, be fully insured now? Are they fully recovered? Every bank, every community bank in Oklahoma, regardless of the size of the deposit, will they get the same treatment that SVBP just got or Signature Bank just got?
A bank only gets that treatment if a majority of the FDIC board, a supermajority of the Fed board, and I, in consultation with the president, determine that the failure to protect uninsured depositors would create systemic risk and significant economic and financial consequences.
So what is your
And we
plan?
made that determination.
Right. So what is
two
your
banks.
plan to keep large depositors from moving their funds out of community banks into the big banks? We have seen the mergers of banks over the past decade. I'm concerned you're about to accelerate that by encouraging anyone who has a large deposit in a community bank to say, we're not going to make you whole, but if you go to one of our preferred banks, we will make you whole at that point.
Look, I mean, that's certainly not something that we're encouraging.
That is happening right now.
That is happening because depositors are concerned about the bank failures that have happened and whether or not other banks could also
No,
fail.
it's happening
And
because you're
it's-
fully insured no matter what the amount is if you're in a big bank. You're not fully insured if you're in a community bank.
Well, you're not fully insured. And
You
the big-
were at Signature, and
the
it
big-
just barely met that threshold. You were at Signature.
Well, we felt that there was a serious risk of contagion that could have brought down and triggered runs on many banks. And that's something, given that our judgment is that the banking system overall is safe and sound, depositors should have confidence in the system, and we took these actions.
So there's a
to
special
discourage
assessment that's been done
contagion.
on community banks in my state and all banks across the country. Was there any discussion that that special assessment would only apply to the larger banks, or was it always assumed the special assessment would cover every bank, including rural banks in my state?
I think, I'm not certain what the rules are around that. That's for the FDIC to determine.
It has been reported publicly that SVB had a large number of Chinese investors that are there, including some that were companies directly connected to the Chinese Communist Party. Will those individuals, companies, entities, and investors that are Chinese investors be made whole based on assessments in my banks in Oklahoma? So what I'm asking is, will my banks in Oklahoma pay a special assessment to be able to make Chinese investors whole from Silicon Valley Bank?
Uninsured investors will be made whole in that bank, and I suppose that could include foreign depositors, but I don't believe there's any legal basis to discriminate among uninsured.
I get it, but I'm
depositors.
just saying that my community banks are going to pay this additional fee. It is always fascinating to me as well, the conversation that taxpayers are being made whole in this, that taxpayers are not going to have any kind of consequence on this. I'm sure my bankers are going to be very excited to know they no longer pay taxes, and their banks no longer pay taxes. Credit unions don't pay taxes, banks do, and so they're definitely taxpayers as well, and all banks make their revenue off of rates and fees and such to their account holders, which means every Oklahoman will pay higher fees in their community bank.
We're just going to have to move on.
Well, I bet you're going to have to move on. The guy's getting to too much truth. I'm not always a huge fan of Mr. Langford, but boy, he's nailing it there, is he not, Rebecca?
He has got it on the head, Brandon. And this is exactly what we talked about on Monday night, that you cannot pick and choose the winners and losers. That's fascism. That's crony capitalism. And this is exactly the Equal Protection Clause under the 14th Amendment. You know, we had too big to fail in 2008, 2009. You guys will remember clearly, oh, it's too big to fail. We've got to bail them out, right? So that was when the big banks were too big. And we had Lehman Brothers, AIG, Bank of America, all of these things, too big to fail. They've changed that language, and now that the language has become systemically important, basically. There's about 7 to 8 banks in America that are being deemed GIC, which is globally, systemically important, GSI rather. And so that means that these big banks, these global, but U.S. national banks that do international business, are globally systemically important. And what Yellen has just said right there is SVB was determined by the FDIC by a supermajority and cleared by her and the President of the United States that they would go above and beyond the 250 limitation and make all depositors completely whole, even though the average deposit at SVB at collapse was over $2 million. So what they have done is basically created separate classes under their executive authority of the FDIC and the executive branch, which administers the Treasury Department. The Treasury Department is a part of the executive. And that definitely is in direct conflict with the constitutional equal protection that says all law must be applied equally among citizens. So you cannot have, and he's making an excellent point, you cannot have a regional bank in Oklahoma paying a fee for an SVB bank that has Chinese depositors for Chinese venture capitalists that were quasi-American Chinese joint ventures that were going to IPO in the United States that are going to be made completely whole based off of a fee that an Oklahoma regional bank is paying. And then the Oklahoma regional bank is not systemically important, and therefore it's not fully bailed out. And now you have two depositors in the United States completely treated totally different under the law. And that is not going to fly. This is completely unconstitutional.